everybody, and welcome once again to Real Shame, a show where the two of us talk about our list of movie blind spots. My name is Andy.
And I'm Adam.
And this week, we got a couple of adventure movies in store. But before we get into our Monday movie, we always like to start off the Monday episode where we talk about what we've been watching lately. So I'll throw it over to you. What have you been watching lately, Adam?
A couple things. One thing that we've already talked about. Kirby and I watched some movies that came out recently within the last couple of years that she hasn't necessarily saw. So we watched Ready Player One, the Steven Spielberg movie. I'm warming up to this movie. Each time I watch it, I kind of warm up to it. There's aspects of it that I kind of like. So I don't know where I fall on this. And I like the book. And Ernie Klein has a sequel coming out this month, and we're filming in November. So he has a sequel, Ready Player 2, coming out. So I'm interested to read that. We watched. No, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I wasn't, but I will say I'm not ready for Player 2.
You aren't?
No.
Player 2 is out of the game. Game over, man. Game over. In addition to that, we watched Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, I think is the full title.
Yeah.
Kirby has not seen that. I remember being really positive on this movie after we watched it in theaters. Mm-hmm. But watching it again is just, it's too like jukeboxy in the way that Suicide Squad was jukeboxy. Like the needle drops are just annoying, and they're always like covers of like famous songs and stuff like that. And it just feels not confident, like in the fact that it feels like it has to rely on the music to kind of propel the movie instead of like the script and stuff like that. And then the only standout scene for me in that movie, and I've seen it before, was the Harley Quinn in the police station, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I kind of cooled on it since I've seen it in theaters and stuff like that.
I still like it. I liked it in theaters, and I've seen it at home. I still like it. I think it's good.
I like Ewan McGregor a lot. I think his Black Mask is just weird and crazy, and so is Victor Zsasz. There's aspects I like about it. DC just needs to get over using these needle drops. Like they're so annoying. And the thing is like, I'm in the minority, but if we look at what James Gunn has done with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and then he's directing the Suicide Squad movie, there's probably going to be more needle drops. And I just feel like it doesn't do anything for me on those movies, you know?
Yeah.
So the other thing that I watched, and I talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, was Justified. I've been rewatching Justified, the Timothy Olyphant, Graham Yost TV series. I think last time I talked, I watched season 1. I've watched season 2, 3, and 4 of the show. It's a great show. It's just well written. It's very interesting. It's a fun thing to unwind and watch at the end of the day. So that's what I've been watching. I'm going to bounce past it back to you. What have you been watching?
All right, so we didn't mention, but obviously it's in the title of the episode. We're doing The Mummy today. I watched some other Mummy movies. I watched because I had not seen the Tom Cruise one that came out in 2017. It was originally, I think most people know by now, it was supposed to be the start of a new Dark Universe.
The Dark Universe. Which
I would be all on board for them rebooting the Dark, or starting a new Dark Universe. I think that would be cool with today's CGI and everything. But the movie flopped so badly that they canceled all plans to do any Dark Universe. I did watch it because I wanted to see if it was any good, and it's not good.
It's not good.
It's as bad as people say it was.
And we have Russell Crowe as like a cameo as Dr.
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yeah. The movie it's quite long. I can't remember if it's actually 2 hours, but it felt like 2 hours. Yeah. Because it has a lot to set up, because they were trying to set up the Dark Universe with that one movie. But of course they're not going to. And I know that it came out with the trailer where it was missing like the music and stuff, and it just had the audio.
I was going to say that's probably
that didn't help it.
The thing that's going to outlive that movie is that one audio track that they made.
It's pretty weak. It's a pretty weak movie. It is kind of interesting because in this movie the mummy is a female. She's not a male as she is as he is in all the other mummy movies. So at least that is kind of interesting. But that's about the only interesting thing about the movie. It just is not very good. I watched the original, the one that started them all, with Boris Karloff as the Mummy from 1932, I believe.
I think it's 32. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. I'm going to be generous and say it was okay. I think I expected a lot different than what I got, because it's not like the other Mummy movie, like especially the Mummy movie we're going to talk about today. It wasn't even like the Tom Cruise Mummy, but it is the original. It is the one that started it, and it's more of almost like a tragic love story. It's not a horror movie in the least. I mean, I know it's part of the Universal Monster series, but I wouldn't classify it as a horror film. I would classify it as kind of a sad, because again, he just wants to be with his love, right? He's brought out of mummification after all these years, and he sees a woman who looks like the reincarnation of his former lover, and he just wants to be with her. I mean, yes, he does kill some people in the movie, but maybe only like one or two. Like, it's not. I expected a little more like Invisible Man or Frankenstein or something, a little bit more fiendishness, and you don't get it. It is atmospheric, but it's pretty darn slow. Even and I get it, it's 1932, so it's not going to be super fast paced, but even at maybe 73 minutes, it still felt like it was really long. Okay. So, I mean, again, I recognize its classic status, but I'd be interested to see some of the sequels to see if they kind of pick it up a little bit more. I filled in another Denis Villeneuve gap. I watched Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Because we talked about
Enemy. Yeah. So we didn't talk about it on the show, I think, because I think we saw that during October when we weren't doing what we've been watching. But we both watched Enemy.
Yes, we did. What do you think about Prisoners?
I thought Prisoners was good. It's long. It's like 2.5 hours, but I found it really interesting the whole time. I do think there's some actions in there that some of the characters do that I didn't really find very believable. And I think the movie kind of bites off a little more than it can chew. But I still thought it was extremely watchable, and Hugh Jackman was really good and really scary. And Jake Gyllenhaal was really good. I thought they both did a really good performance. It also has like Paul Dano's in it, and Viola Davis, and Terrence Howard, and people like that. But it's a good cast. I thought it was worth seeing. It was worth watching. It was good. And then finally, I got two movies listed here, but I'm only going to mention one. I watched a movie with it was based on a Clive Cussler novel, starring a character named Dirk Pitt, who works for an organization called Numa. And no, it's not Sahara, but we might be foreshadowing a little bit. It's a movie called Raise the Titanic, which came out in 1980. And it doesn't have Matthew McConaughey as Dirk Pitt. It has a man named Richard Jordan as Dirk Pitt. And Jason Robards plays this admiral that he works with.
Admiral Sandecker.
Yeah. But he does work for Numa in this movie as well. Because, again, it's Clive Cussler, I guess, wrote a series of Dirk Pitt novels. This was the first adaptation of such a Dirk Pitt novel, and it did not do well at the box office, and it was not very well critically received. But I actually kind of liked it. Because it came out in 1980. That was 5 years before Titanic was actually discovered, the wreckage. So up until that point, people thought the Titanic might have gone down in one piece. It didn't break in half like it does, now that we know that, and that's why it is that way, obviously, in James Cameron's Titanic, because it came out after they found the wreckage. But this was prior to them finding the wreckage, so when they do raise the Titanic, and that's not a spoiler, it's right there in the title, they raise the Titanic, it's all in one piece.
Oh, that's cool.
But there's some subplots and stuff in the movie that just go nowhere and don't need to be in the movie. I feel like that's why critics hated it, but I thought it was kind of fun. It's not really an adventure movie, though. It's more a movie about the logistics of how they would raise the Titanic, and that's kind of, if you go into it expecting that and don't expect like an action adventure movie, I feel like you'll be a lot more satisfied. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty decent.
All right.
That's what we've been watching.
So let's get into our feature review, and that's going to be 1999's The Mummy.
I've already dated the map. It's almost 3,000 years old, and if you look at the hieratic just here, well, it's Hamunaptra.
Dear God, don't be ridiculous. We're scholars, not treasure hunters. Hamunaptra's a myth told by ancient Arab storytellers to amuse Greek and Roman tourists.
Yes, I know all the silly blather about the city being protected by the curse of a mummy nonsense, but my research has led me to believe that the city itself may have actually existed.
Are we talking about the Hamunaptra?
Yes, the city of the dead, where the earliest pharaohs were said to have hidden the wealth of Egypt.
It was directed by Stephen Sommers, and it's also written by Stephen Sommers, and a few other people contributed to that script. Librarian Evie, played by Rachel Weisz, hires Rick O'Connell, played by Brandon Fraser, to guide them to the lost city of Hamunaptra. There, they awaken the undead high priest Imhotep, and together they must stop him from resurrecting his long-lost love. Like Andy said, this is a remake of the 1932 movies. In the early 90s, Universal was looking to kind of reboot, revitalize this franchise. They wanted to do an update on the original, so they actually had a bunch of different directors attached to this movie. Clive Barker was attached to the movie. Joe Dante was attached, with Daniel Day-Lewis playing Imhotep. We had George Romero and Wes Craven attached to it. So I guess they were going very deep into that horror side of things. But then Stephen Sommers came to Universal and he pitched I think it was like an 18-page script, or maybe it was 80. It had an 8 in it, of an Indiana Jones kind of Jason the Argonauts themed or a vibe of movie. And that's the movie that we have for The Mummy. I am a big fan of this movie. I really like it a whole lot. It's up. I think everyone probably knows this by now, but I like this kind of action adventure swashbuckling thing. It's very much in the vein of Indiana Jones. But before we get into my love fest with the movie, let's jump it over to Andy and see why he didn't like it. I'm assuming that's what he's gonna say.
Well, no. So before I talk about it, I do. You said the movie was written by Stephen Sommers and some other people. One of the people that kind of co-wrote, not the screenplay, but at least the story, was the same guy that wrote Glory, Kevin Jarre.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he co-wrote the Mummy story. He doesn't get a
There's like
credit.
4 people, and I just was too lazy to write down all their names. But
yeah. So this may be the first time. When we were making out our list of movies that we haven't seen, I think I put down the Mummy series because I know for a fact I have not seen the Mummy second one, then the third one. And I think I wrote down the Scorpion King series, but I've seen the Scorpion King, but I haven't seen any of the Scorpion King sequels, and probably
was there a sequel to Scorpion King?
There's like 5 or there's more sequels to ScorpionKing than there is to the Mummy.
I think they pull like different WWE actors into it, or wrestlers into it.
I think you're right. But since I wrote that down on the list, I just wrote the Mummy series. The more I looked at it, I just thought in my head, I've never seen any of the Mummy movies, but I actually have seen the Mummy before.
Oh no!
I didn't. Yeah,
you broke the podcast.
I broke the podcast.
That was fun.
But just like a lot of other movies, I saw this. I didn't see it in theaters when it came out. I had no interest in seeing it. It didn't look good to me. And then when it came out on DVD, I still had no interest in seeing it. But my dad had a copy of it, and probably still does to this day, have a copy of the DVD. And I was over at my parents' house, and I saw that he had it, and I thought, well, it's free. Yeah. I'll take it home and watch it. So I probably saw it around 2001. Or something like that, and I just didn't find it memorable at all because I completely forgot about the fact that I'd seen it. But no, as I was watching it, there was just far too much in this movie that I remembered when I was seeing it the second time. But again, it was almost like seeing it for the first time because apparently I didn't find it memorable at all the first time. I'm happy to report I actually did like it. Right. I did like it. No, I mean, this is a fun movie. I'm not quite as crazy about it as you are, but I still think that it's a good, entertaining film. I think Brendan Fraser plays a great hero. Yes. I forget all their names. Rick O'Connell. He plays a great Rick O'Connell. Yeah. His character is really fun. Rachel Weisz is adorably peppy as the librarian.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I feel like they have good chemistry, and that helps a lot because in a movie like this, if the two leads they have zero chemistry, you're like, get out of here. But no, I liked it. I will say I do feel it's a bit long, and I do feel like there's some stuff in there, that could have probably been excised. I mean, as far as the CGI and stuff goes, I mean, I realize it's 1999, I liked it. I mean,
It does show its age, but like you said, for its time, it's wonderful.
I mean, I think when I saw it back then, I was probably, I don't know, maybe a little more snobby,
Yeah.
and so it's like, oh, I just dismissed it as just some fluff or something like that. But no, I mean, I'm happy that I watched it. I do like it. I would watch it again, and now I'm interested to see. Of course, I did write the Mummy series on my list, so I guess I should see the sequels. Yeah, you well,
I think I've seen the second one. I've not seen the
one with Jet Li,
Dragon Emperor or Dragon King.
Emperor. Yeah, something like that.
I haven't seen those, and I have not seen the Scorpion King because that looked bad. So I haven't. So those have both be on both our lists.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like, I love Indiana Jones. Like, I've talked about The Last Crusade being my favorite Indiana Jones movie, and I just want for this kind of globe-trotting action adventure archaeologist kind of swashbuckler, swagger kind of movie, right? So this kind of scratches that itch for me, right? Because we don't have it. We didn't have Indiana Jones. I mean, we got the fourth one recently, but there was a long time between those, and I just want stuff like that, And we have the Uncharted series, which also scratches that itch. So I just want something of this kind of ilk and of this thing, and I'm with you. I think it does a great job in it. It's not. I never once thought of this as a remake of the 1932 Mummy, right? I thought it shared the same name, but it just feels like
really similar.
Yeah, it just feels completely different, right?
Yeah.
I think Brendan Fraser does an excellent job. I was telling Kirby this. I think if they're going to reboot Han Solo and he was the right age, they're going to do Han Solo, a Star Wars story, and Brendan Fraser was young enough. I think he would have done a way better job than the actor that did it. I just think Brendan Fraser just gets it. He just has that swagger and all that kind of stuff too. I'm with you. I think Rachel Weisz is just wonderful in this movie.
Yeah.
She looks like Kirby was telling me this, and I agree. She looks like a period movie star. Like she looks like she just fits into that 1930s kind of aesthetic and world. I think Odin Ferrer does a great job. He doesn't get a name. His character doesn't get a name in this movie, but he's named later on as Ardith Bay. Eric, Avari, who we saw in The Beast is in this movie. Yeah. He does a great job. I just think,
But I will say, since you just mentioned Eric Avery, I will say, and I wrote this down, how incompetent are these museum workers? So Rachel Weisz knocks over every bookcase in the place, and then he almost burns the map with the candle.
He does it on purpose.
Oh, was he doing it on purpose?
Yeah, because he's working with Odin Ferrer with Ardith Bay. He's part of that tribe. So
I'm a dingbat. Because I mean, I realized that later in the movie, but I didn't think back to that part. I was like, he's stupid.
No.
But that makes sense. Okay, never mind. Then I strike that complaint. See, I need somebody that's seen it a bunch of times to explain little plot details. I promise I'm not stupid. Because I do remember the part later on when he is with Oded Fair's character or whatever. But I didn't go back and revise my memory of that scene. But I also thought it was funny. I was kind of giggling to myself during the movie because when you first meet Brendan Fraser's character, he's fighting in the French Foreign Legion.
Yep.
But then later, when he's like imprisoned, he has like an Encino Man,
Georgia Jungle.
I wanted him to have that Encino Man hair the whole time, but he doesn't. He cleans up.
Where
or whatever.
He plays with the fire, and he says, "Squeezing the juice."
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's fun. I like him in that scene. I like when he grabs a kiss from Rachel Weisz. I like that. I like when they're on the ship and like they're shooting at him and she pulls him aside real quick. I mean, that is what you want in these kind of movies.
Yeah.
He throws someone overboard, which I love in movies because, Indiana Jones throws a guy over for no ticket. Like, come on. I mean,
well, you mentioned if he was the right age, he could have played Han Solo. I seem to remember there's a scene in The Mummy where he kind of runs into an area and then he runs out because they're chasing a la Harrison Ford when the stormtroopers he goes one way and then he comes out the other way. So it reminded me of that actually.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. I was very annoyed by the warden guy.
Yeah.
His voice. I think I was annoyed by him because his voice sounds very much like Charlie Day. I thought his voice sounded a lot like Charlie Day. And when Charlie Day does his kind of whiny shtick, I was like, oh god, is that Charlie Day
So when
just
he
under a
picks
bunch
up-
of makeup?
When he picks up the scarab and does the cry, it gave you Charlie
Yeah,
Day.
well, I
vibes.
I was glad his character doesn't last all that long.
Yeah.
And then you have Kevin J. O'Connor's character.
who is sniveling and
He's
like creepy and
the biggest problem with the movie to me.
Oh.
I feel like, well, and I know he worked with Stephen Sommers on Deep Rising, which I don't know how you feel about Deep Rising. I can't stand it.
Is that the shark movie?
It's some kind of monster movie.
I don't think I've seen it.
I hated it when I saw it in 1990. I mean, I hated it. I thought it was one of the worst movies I'd seen in a long time. And Kevin J. O'Connor plays that same whiny, snivelly character. He's the worst thing about that movie. And it's a terrible movie to begin with, but he's the worst thing about that movie. Look, I mean, I don't feel like he's in this movie a lot. I mean, I feel like they have enough scenes without him. It didn't bring the movie down that much for me. But I feel like you could have cut his character out completely because he added nothing. I understand he's kind of like the familiar of the Mummy, almost like Dracula has familiars. Yeah. He's working with him. I get it, but I could have done without his character. But again, mainly that's just because I find Kevin J. O'Connor mostly annoying.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of arch and like over the top, but I think that's what kind of
and his accent, once again, was like in and out. Yeah. I don't know what he was trying to do, and he didn't succeed at any of it to me.
But I think he adds enough fun to it, and you get this kind of... Because you can't really have, like, Brendan Fraser and Emotep constantly going at it, especially when Emotep's trying to, like, resurrect himself fully and stuff like that. So you can kind of have that bickering and stuff like that. So, like, you know, he's like, hey, Benny... You know, or Benny's like, I got the horses. He's like, hey, Benny, I'm on the right side of the river.
Yeah.
You can have that kind of stuff. So for me, I mean, it's going to be hard for me to be very super critical on the movie. So I kind of take it for what it is. Yeah. And that stuff kind of works for me because it makes it more fun in my eyes, right?
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, again, there's a few other things that I didn't particularly like about it, but they're small. I mean, it's not a big deal. But yeah, this movie is fun. It's a fun movie. I don't know. Again, maybe I just was really snobbish back in 2000 or whenever I saw it, but I do like this movie. I don't think I'll ever be the super fan, but I would watch it again for sure.
Yeah,
it's an entertaining film.
I think it balances the stuff correctly for that kind of four-corner movie, right? It balances the funness of it. It balances the action adventure. Yeah. You know, you got a sprinkle of love story in there. Like for me, it does all those things well, and that's why I like it so much. You know.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously, you know, because this gets a lot of comparisons to Indiana Jones, and as I was watching it, I'm thinking of the appropriate analogy. Is it like Diet Indiana Jones? Is it Indiana Jones caffeine-free Indiana? I was trying to think of soda analogy. Is it Indiana Jones Zero, like Coke Zero? But after I was done watching it, I was looking at the reviews and stuff that Siskel and Ebert had done. Well, not Siskel, but Ebert had done. And I found the clip on YouTube where he reviews it. His guest reviewer that week was, I think, Vincent Canby, who was Time Magazine's reviewer. Okay. I may be getting all this wrong, but they both liked it. They both gave it a thumbs up. But Vincent Canby describes it as not the son of Indiana Jones, but more like the son of Indiana Jones. But either way, doesn't matter. That's not. I don't think he really meant that as an insult because he did like the movie overall. But I thought that was kind of a funny way to describe it. I mean, it's not Indiana Jones, but it'll do in a pinch. It's still good.
Yeah, and for me, like...
I mean, nothing is Indiana Jones.
Yeah. And for me, in that kind of vein of what you're saying is, I think this shows that you don't have to remake Indiana Jones or make yet another sequel to Indiana Jones to kind of get the same vibe. Like, you can get fun casts that have fun with it, that kind of know what the movie is, that have chemistry, and you can do something in this setting that doesn't have to be Indiana Jones. Like, we don't have to keep on regurgitating that stuff over and over again, or recast these familiar names with new actors and stuff like that.
Well, and they should have stopped with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Yes. I know that's your favorite film. It's not my favorite film, but I love that film. Yeah. It's an amazing film. That's a perfect way to end that trilogy. Don't keep going with Crystal Skull, and they're talking about making a part 5.
I think they're making part 5. I mean, and James Mangold is attached to it, or was attached to it. So that makes me kind of excited because I think he's a very good filmmaker.
I mean, I'm more with you. I think just do something else. Do something like The Mummy. Do a different... I mean,
they're going to make an Uncharted movie. That's going to kind of scratch the itch, although I'm not sure how I feel about Tom Holland being Nathan Drake, but
I'm not a fan of that casting, but I'll watch it.
Maybe we'll talk about that in our reviewer question.
Yeah.
That was anything else on The Mummy?
No, you
Yeah.
you want to do the reviews or the critics score? Did you have something else?
I was going to say something else. So,
Add something else.
kind of like we talked about at the beginning, there's 2 sequels of the Mummy. There's a spin-off series that birthed its own set of sequels, and there's also an animated series. So
Yeah.
you got all that from the Mummy. So you did say what the critics thought, didn't you?
Well, I said Siskel or Ebert and Vincent Canby gave it 2 thumbs up, but it's 61% fresh, 75% audience score. Roger Ebert gave it 3 stars, thumbs up, and Leonard Maltin gave it 1.5 stars.
Wow.
And Leonard Maltin gave the 2 sequels both 1.5 stars. He didn't like any of them.
Oh man, Leonard. Yeah, we got to get you on the show. We can figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think this just if it makes you feel any better, I think Scorpion King might have got a bomb, so it's even worse than that. But yeah, and the Scorpion King, seriously, they are still making Scorpion King movies. Like I think they made a sequel like 2 years ago. They're still churning those out. Yeah, that franchise is taking on a life of its own.
And I remember reading a news article that The Rock wants to like either redo it again or wants to resume his role as the Scorpion King. You know, because The Rock can't say no to nothing. So with that, like I said a little bit earlier, I like these kind of movies in this vein, and I want a movie that kind of scratch that itch. And there's not a whole lot that do that. But in 2005, there was an adaptation of a Clive Cussler novel that came out, the movie that was made, that is kind of in the same vein as this. It's a fun, action-y adventure movie, and that is Sahara. So with this movie, I paired Sahara because I figured it would just be another fun action movie. And so we're going to do that on Wednesday. And along with those Wednesday episodes, we answer viewer questions. So if you have a question, shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram @realshame. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below if you like The Mummy, or if you don't, if you're watching us on YouTube, that would be super cool. And stay tuned in 2 days. I was going to say next week. Stay tuned in 2 days as we talk about Sahara, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.